So we just reviewed characteristics between dicots and monocots. So let's continue on looking at our angiosperms. We have more categories. We have annual plants that fall underneath the angiosperms. Annuals are going to be plants that only grow and produce during 1 year or one season. Okay, wheat, corn, sunflowers. A lot of your flowering plants will do this. That will be annuals. What happens though is the root systems stay in place, okay, and then each year during the right seasonal conditions, spring, summertime, they will regrow, water, nutrients, reproduce flowers, seeds, fruit, and then they'll die off at the end of that season, that growing year. A lot of your weeds will be this way. A lot of your grasses will be this way. Corn, like I mentioned, wheat, peas, beans, a lot of those types of plants as well. They are drought resistant. They can survive through winter, very cold conditions because of their seeds, the way their seeds are built and how they can be dormant or lie dormant within the ground. Your biennials, these are ones that will last about a 2-year lifespan, and then they will die off, and then they can regrow. They have larger root systems, okay, that can help for storage, like carrots, turnips, beets. A lot of these types that we think of would be ones that we would harvest for food purposes. Your perennials, they can last several years. Okay, there are a large number of our flowering plants, geraniums, and so forth, that will maybe go away after 1 year, during the cold season, but then regrow back the next year, and you don't have to continually replant them. Whereas your annuals, you would have to replant, and so forth. Okay, let's get into we're going to be reviewing some of these plant cells because we've talked about them before, but then some of the plant cells we look at we haven't looked at before. So when we get into maybe like some of the leaf structure, you might have heard some of the terminology that we'll look at, but then some of it you won't. But we know that plants are composed of many different types of cells. All right, they are multicellular organisms. They are distinguished from animal cells because they have a cell wall, they have that large central vacuole, and they contain chloroplasts for photosynthesis. Here is a nice picture of a cross section of a leaf. Okay? We are going to focus on leaf cells for a little bit, and we're going to get into these different parts. But there are types of cells called parenchyma cells. Okay, they're the most abundant type of plant cell. These parenchyma cells, they form the skin of the plant, anything from the leaf to the stem. Okay, they're going to form the skin of the plant. Their major functions is to store and produce food. Okay, so storage of nutrients and water and food production. Most of the parenchyma cells are going to be edible, like for fruits and vegetables. Okay, so when you look at a plant that produces fruits and vegetables, the fruits and vegetables part would also be made of parenchyma cells. Some other type of cells, the collenchyma and the sclerenchyma, so these are some very nice words. All right, the collenchyma cells, they're elongated, they have very thickened cell walls. Think about the celery, for example. The long stringy fibers that make up celery, those would be composed of collenchyma cells. Your sclerenchyma cells are also going to be thick, but they're going to be more rigid. They're going to provide structure and fiber. Okay. Most of the vascular tissue, the xylem and phloem that we talked about in the previous parts of these notes, that vascular tissue is going to be made up of sclerenchyma cells. It has to have support and rigidity to allow the flow of water and nutrients. All right, so let's start looking at types of plant tissue. The dermal tissue is going to be the skin. Okay, the skin is the epidermis, epi meaning outer layer, dermis meaning skin. So the dermal tissue is the skin of the plant. It's a single layer. Okay, it's made up of something called a cuticle, the outer layer, and it is it's a waxy layer. Some plants have a thicker cuticle than others, but it's kind of like the cutin of the gymnosperms. It's a waxy, sometimes thicker, sometimes thinner, but it's that waxy covering that helps plants retain water within their leaves and stems, so water loss through evaporation doesn't occur as much. It's a very good adaptation for living on dry land and away from water. This picture, you definitely want to make sure that you know the components of this cross section of a leaf. Okay, this would be the surface or the top of the leaf. So it's always pointing towards sunlight. The bottom of the leaf, okay, is usually going to be pointing away from the sunlight. Here is your cuticle that you can see. Right underneath the cuticle is the upper dermis, all right, of the leaf. Right underneath that is this ground tissue. Okay, so the dermal tissue is that top layer, that skin layer. Then you have this ground tissue. Within this ground tissue is going to be where the chloroplasts are found. So within this layer of ground tissue, right here near the surface of the leaf, okay, is going to be where the chloroplasts are found. This is where photosynthesis is going to occur in this ground tissue layer, very close to the surface of the leaf. Okay, within the leaf there will be veins. Okay, we've looked at you've seen veins of a leaf. Okay, they're in different structures. Remember the dicot plants will have vein-like structures that are going to branch out, where the monocot plants will have more of a linear structure to their vein system in their leaves. But these veins are where you're going to find the vascular tissue, that xylem and phloem. It's where water and food is going to be transported. Okay, then you have your you're getting down to your lower dermis and your cuticle on the bottom. Notice embedded within the surface, either the top or the bottom surface of the leaf, are going to be the stoma. Remember the stoma, the main function of the stoma are to be pores to allow for gas exchange to occur. It'll bring in carbon dioxide into the stoma. Okay, it'll release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. It could also release water vapor. Okay, and we've talked about that before. And then remember, around the stoma, the hole or the stoma, the holes, the openings is the stoma. But then these purple parts that surround the stoma are those guard cells. Those are actually what open and close to allow the stoma to be opened or closed. So those are the main parts of the plant leaf cell, or the plant's leaf. Okay, those different cells and what they're made of. So make sure you're familiar with that. So we've mentioned vascular tissue. Remember, I've talked about the two types. It is a transport system, kind of like a highway, the highways of the plant. It allows for the movement of gases and nutrients and water. Okay, the xylem part of the vascular tissue, that's where water is going to be transported from the roots. Okay, and minerals that are going to be absorbed by the roots are going to be transported from the roots to the other parts of the plant. Right, the stems need water. The leaves need water. So the xylem is going to be specifically for the transport of the water and minerals absorbed by the roots. And then your phloem is the other type of vascular tissue, and it's going to be specifically for nutrients, gases, and waste, okay, that is going to be transported. The phloem usually is going to transport things from the leaves at the top of the plant down to the rest of the plant. And then the xylem is usually going to flow in the opposite direction. It's going to flow from the roots and carry the water that's absorbed from the bottom of the plant up to the top. So they can move in both directions, but those are the main directions of the xylem and phloem. Okay, and like I mentioned before, in the veins of your leaf, okay, you're going to find your xylem and your phloem. All right, let's look at ground tissue. What's actually, if you look at this picture, what is this ground tissue? So let's look at that. The ground tissue is going to be where photosynthesis occurs. This is where your chloroplasts are going to be found that contain chlorophyll and the sites for photosynthesis. The ground tissue is also going to be used for storage. It's going to help add support to the plant, okay, its shape, allow it to grow towards the light. Your meristemic tissue is where there are parts of the plant where meristemic tissue can be found where growth is going to occur. Okay, new leaves will be grown, new roots will be grown, stems will be able to grow, branches will be able to grow at meristemic tissue. This is where cells divide and growth occurs. The apical or the apical meristems is going to be found down close to the tips of the roots. Okay, so that leading forward part of growth, and at bases of stems, at the tips of the stems, for more growth of the plant to occur. This particular type of meristemic tissue helps in the lengthening of the roots and stems. Your lateral meristems, okay, are going to be where the growth widthwise of the plant will occur. Roots. Let's talk about our root system. All right, we know that roots are where water and nutrients are going to be absorbed from the ground. Roots act as anchors, right, to add support. Plants are considered sessile. Right? We've seen that word before a couple different times when we've talked about some of the other kingdoms. Remember, the word sessile, S-E-S-S-I-L-E, means that this organism cannot move. It is attached to the substrate or surface that it is on. Well, plants are anchored, okay, to their substrate by their roots. The roots help build root pressure, which is going to help push those minerals and water that's absorbed from the ground up, okay, against gravity due to the amount of pressure. Now, there are some different types of roots. Let's look at tap roots first. Tap roots are a type of primary root. Okay, a primary root is one single large root that grows. It could be long, it could be thick in size or as far as width. There are not very many secondary roots that'll grow off of a tap root, a primary root. Its main function, this is where the starches and sugars of the plant is going to be stored. Okay, and if you can see in the background, you can see some examples. Carrots, radishes, those types of things. Most of your tap roots are dicots, so they produce two leaves from their seed when they start to grow. Some common examples, your oak and hickory trees, okay, have a tap root. So if you were to dig up a 50-year-old oak tree, it might have a few smaller roots that are growing out, secondary roots that are growing out, but it's going to have one main large taproot that is growing down to access water nutrients. Hickory trees, carrots, beets, radishes, okay, for some examples.